Hey, you want to enable the chat, Eric? Since
I
me
already
and
did.
Pinky
I did
never
before
know
you
how.
guys even
Ooh,
joined.
look at
I
you.
did it 30 minutes ago. I'm on top of it today. All right.
So good.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Hey, I'm going to talk about this because I just noticed it. Did you guys ever go and listen to these on like Spotify?
No.
No.
I've watched them on
Okay.
YouTube occasionally, but I hate
Same,
hearing
yeah.
myself talk, so I don't do it for much.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we always, have the BS time now. And
Yeah.
I'd assumed that our marketing team was trimming this off and
Oh God,
starting
no.
the podcast. No, it's all there. So,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good.
yeah. I
Well,
don't hate
hello, Spotify friends.
it.
Any podcast or podcast delivery. Hello.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Hey, guys. What's up, everybody? We'll let people roll in for a few minutes here and then we'll get started. So, let's talk sriracha, okay?
All right.
Okay.
All right. First, you guys are, I'm assuming we're all fans of sriracha here. Is that fair?
I mean, it's okay. I'm not like a huge fan of it. I enjoy it
It-
occasionally. Not a big
It
fan.
depends on the food for me for sure.
Mhm.
Like you're not gonna see me with a bowl of pho in front of me without a lot of sriracha in it. But like
Mhm.
certain things, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
put it on either. So
Yeah. I'm a big fan. Like obviously, like ramen, noodles, stuff like that. I always love sriracha on it. I'm a big
yeah.
fan of like sriracha on pizza too. I don't know if you guys are like hot sauce pizza
I
guys.
have had it.
It's
I have had it on pizza. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm sure you guys have noticed, right? There's a huge shortage of sriracha that
Mhm.
just kind of disappeared from the shelves earlier this year. Do you guys know what happened? You know what it caused the shortage?
no.
I thought it was a provider. I don't remember. There was a provider that they stopped using, right, or something like that, or it stopped
Yeah.
delivering or whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so it was like Underwood Farms. They had been partners with Hui Fong, which is the original
Mhm.
sriracha creator for like 30 years. And as I understand it, sriracha was like, hey, we need to up production. We need more peppers, right?
Yeah.
And so the farm was like, cool, we need more land. And so they'd already had their rates negotiated. They'd been locked in for years, right, for what they'll pay per pepper. And so Underwood Farms essentially goes out and buys thousands or a massive amount of acreage so they can produce more peppers, chilies for sriracha for Huey Fong. And then Huey Fong, after they purchased the land, suddenly says, guess what? We're going to pay you like 50% we were paying you before for those peppers. And so essentially their business is no longer profitable. They're going to go out of business if they
Right.
operate under that model. It's kind of like that Walmart model. They do that to a lot of companies, right? Force them into massive production and then they undercut their prices and they have no one else to sell the products to, so they're forced to sell to them.
Yeah.
So Underwood Farms, instead of saying like, okay, we're just going to get screwed over, said, nope, we're not sending you peppers anymore. And on top of that, we're going to sue you. And so they sued Hui Fong and won for like 23 million bucks. But the cool thing is they started making their own sriracha sauce at Underwood Farms. And so this original pepper that went to Hui Fong. And so they have sriracha, like garlic chili. They have the sambal. They have all the stuff that we can't find anymore. So I want to talk about this because I'm really excited about it. Ordered some bottles a couple weeks ago, got them in, and did some taste tests, and it's awesome. It's delicious sriracha sauce.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's exciting.
maybe I'll eat a little just for the celebration then. 'Cause, yeah. I don't buy it very regularly. I used to buy it a lot more, and I love hot stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just I like it, but it's yeah, kind of like you guys are saying. It's got to be the right food. You got to have it in a specific spot. But I'll, you know, kind of throw
Yeah.
hot sauce on anything. So,
Oh, let me
got the
clarify.
different ones.
Underwood Ranches, not Underwood
Ranches.
Farms. It's
Yeah.
Underwood Ranches. Yeah.
I just Googled around and I was like, I'm not trying to get a pumpkin, man. Halloween's over.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys are looking for a good sriracha that's close to the original, check out Underwood Ranches. You can just order from their website. I've tried a bunch of the other like sriracha brands that came out and they kind of suck. I haven't found one I like.
I could
There
see
we
that.
go.
It's a specific flavor. Like it is its own thing. So
Yeah, Tabasco came out with a sriracha, which is hilarious, and
that's
it
weird.
sucks as to be expected.
And it sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tabasco is not one that I enjoy. I
Yeah.
very occasionally like with eggs at the Waffle House or something like that, but
Mhm.
usually I just don't generally enjoy it.
All right. So that leads me to another question then. We talk sriracha, hot sauces. I know we're all fans of hot sauce, but what's your favorite like cheap, like Tabasco like, or just, you can find it anywhere, a couple bucks for a bottle. Not super hot, but a good hot sauce. What's your favorite, like, go-to, just cheap run-of-the-mill hot sauce?
So for me, it's the Texas Pete extra hot.
Mm-hmm.
Like Texas Pete's okay. It's like got a good flavor, but they've got an extra hot that kicks it up a notch, and it's pretty much the same price.
Yeah.
And can
A
you
little
find
more
that
difficult to
anywhere?
find.
I don't even know that I've seen it.
It's a little more difficult to find. Usually, like your Kroger stores will have it. I think like Walmart usually doesn't have it, but usually Kroger has it pretty consistently, like, or Ralph's or whatever the one is where you're at, Safeway or whatever.
What
It's
about
good,
you,
though.
Eric? What's your favorite?
Honestly, I don't eat a lot of them, so I just have I have a ton of hot sauces right now.
Mhm.
Like I'm just eating a ton. I mean, I haven't touched one of like on a you can find it anywhere sauce in a while. Oftentimes just like Tapatio or like
Yeah,
Cholula
yeah,
or something
yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Crystal. You guys tried Crystal before?
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
I
good.
don't think
I-
I have.
Yeah, it's like a Louisiana hot
It's
sauce.
that
yeah.
yellow bottle, right? Like it's just like a yellow label, or am I thinking of a different one?
It's a different one. It's like a white, blue. Maybe it's got
Yeah,
yellow
yeah,
on it.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's
white
the
with
white and blue
blue.
one. Yeah, I know the one you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Frank's is
Marty,
good.
Oh,
yeah.
I just looked it up. I've seen it before. I don't think I've actually ever had it though.
It's good. It's like $1, I think, for a bottle. It's super cheap and it's real good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's one of
Yeah.
the 2 or 3 they have at like the Dollar General down here, and I've picked it up
Mhm.
before, like needing something. They have it, and they
Yeah.
have that like just Louisiana brand one. I think that's the yellow one I'm thinking of.
That's the yellow one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They're both good though.
On that topic, and maybe this is why I don't own a bottle of the Crystal hot sauce, is despite all odds, I've never been inside of a Dollar General in my life.
Holy crap!
How?
Yeah,
I
how
said
is that?
despite all odds? I mean, obviously they're everywhere, but
That's
I've never been in
impressive,
one.
man. I'm impressed. I mean, I really am. They're, especially down here, like in the South, right? They just appear. They're just spawning, right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of jokes. There's a guy that does some really funny YouTube videos about them, about how they're growing them in the back of other Dollar Generals and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just
Yeah, I think
I-
they do. They just, find a lot, doze a lot, and they pop a couple Dollar General seeds in there, and you come back a week later and you got a whole store,
Yeah.
and it's staffed and it's stocked.
there
I don't
you
know
go.
how it
Yeah.
works, but
well, it's not staffed. It's not staffed. They have one person who works occasionally, but
yeah.
they're stocked. The ones down here, they in particular laid out a plan to put them every 7 miles, like along like the main highway down here.
Mhm.
And so it's actually really nice to measure distance and time and figure out how long it's going to take to get somewhere. So I'm
Check
like,
your odometer, see if it's accurate. Things like
and it is too. Yeah, that's what's funny about it. I'm just like, I know there was so I was thinking about going to the store, and I was like, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3 Dollar Generals between here and that. So it's about a 20-minute drive. So
Yeah.
okay, so I don't think to get there.
Eric and I play a funny game when we're traveling through the South, right? And we're on road trips, and we guess how many minutes it's going to be till we see the next Dollar General.
Oh,
And it's always less than 10 minutes. But it's,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
But you'll hit
Yeah.
some of those towns where it's like, ooh, I got a feeling they're going to have 2 or maybe even 3 in this town.
Mhm.
So I'm going with 2 minutes, and sometimes it hits, sometimes it don't.
I'll say this: maybe the fact that I've never been in one is that they're not that common out west. I mean, like
Yeah.
I always grew up, or I've lived in California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, right? Like it's always West Coast, and I definitely see them all the time, but they're not like that. They're not that common, at least.
Mhm.
So
Well,
Don't
next
worry,
time you
they're
see
coming.
one, Eric, I want to just tell you should treat yourself and
But
go
I
in
just
there
treat
with
yourself.
DG.
when I normally notice them, it's because I'm on a road trip. I'm like out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and I'm not wanting to stop. I'm wanting I got a 10-hour road trip, and I just want to keep driving. But maybe I
But
will.
maybe
I'll
you need
treat myself.
snacks, beef jerkies, salty treats, sweet treats. They've got it all. And then while you're in there, who knows? You might find a couple yard gnomes for $1, and that's pretty fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you guys want to talk about security?
Yeah, let's do it.
Jesus.
I mean, we could just talk DGs and hot sauces for a while.
Yeah,
but
yeah. We've got some
Yeah.
fancy DGs down here too. I mean, there's like a
Yeah.
grocery store one now. Yeah, I mean, it's wild.
I think we've ruined the show. We're not going to be able
We
to
have.
get Pinky back on topic now.
No,
He's
I'm just
got
thinking about the DGs. Yeah.
a strong passion for the DGs. So,
Yeah. I
Well,
could
everybody-
be talking about hot sauces for sure too. So
well, if there's time left over, we'll circle back. Okay, guys.
I've been really loving some certain ones that I just keep running out of faster than I can order them. It feels like, but
All right, let's do the security thing.
all right, let's do it.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Hackle Box. Pink, you guys have been busy, right? The IR team.
Yeah, it's the season, man. It's always this time of year, and it was kind of funny. It was like the calendar rolled to November, and it was like boom, all of the hacks, right? Like all the 0 days, all the things. You know, for example, because you can kind of gauge it off of this. Like, so Monday we had 5 triages on Monday. I mean, most of the time we're doing 2 or 3 a week or something like that. We had 5 on Monday alone, so it's been rowdy. Yeah, it's
Merry
definitely been busy.
Breachmas, man.
Merry
Merry
Breachmas, yeah.
Breachmas.
Yeah, I keep warning our guys, like especially some of our newer guys. I'm just like, hey, look, just so you know, we've never had a Thanksgiving since I've been here where there's not a really gnarly investigation we're working on. Like it's coming, so just get ready, you know. So
Yeah. So you guys have been seeing stuff all over the place, but I think one of the things you've seen this week was related to Confluence, right? So you guys want to dig in and kind of tell us what you're seeing there and talk about some Confluence vulnerabilities?
yeah. So just a high level, it's so for the Confluence on-prem, the cloud version was not impacted, but they did have a vulnerability come out. It came out on Halloween. It was CVE 2023-22518. Just rated a 9.1 out of 10. But it got hit hard. It looked to me like it was more of just a mass campaign, right? That kind of thing that went out, and we can talk details on the actual CVE here, but just a lot of what we were seeing anyway was more drive-by ransomware, which we don't see very often. And so that was kind of interesting. It was just like these people got hit over the weekend generally, and deployed immediate ransomware and kind of moved on. That's changed a little since then, but that's a lot of what we saw. But it was an unauthenticated attack. Basically allowed you to create an administrator account on the Confluence system.
I will.
And so this, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, I'll point out too that Atlassian did upgrade it from a 9.1 to a 10.0.
Oh, is it 10? Okay.
Oh,
okay.
It's they upgraded it recently. Yeah.
They should.
Yeah. And this is interesting too, because this is the second critical Confluence vulnerability that has been published in less than a month. The previous one was the 22515, and that was a broken access control, right? Where I think in that one, attackers were using the vulnerability to create new admin accounts, right?
They're both being used to create new admin accounts, and they're both kind of the similar but same but different, you know?
Yeah. What was interesting when I was researching the first one, 22515, is that I guess there were exploits of that vulnerability observed all the way back to September 14th, right? So this was being exploited quite a time before it was actually disclosed publicly as well.
They didn't disclose it until the 4th of October. So had a couple weeks there of it happening.
So with 22515, I had a little bit of time to understand the exploit path on that one. I didn't get a digging in with 518, so maybe you guys could shed some light there. But from my understanding in 515, like if you're doing an initial setup, right, of a Confluence server, there's essentially a check that is setup complete, right? And if that check is set to yes, setup is complete, then you're not able to create an admin account, right? But if that's false, then as part of that setup, you're able to create a new default admin account that can be used to access the site, right? And so from my understanding, essentially attackers leverage a way to manipulate that is setup complete flag to return false, and they can get a false return on that. Then they're able to exploit that and create an admin account and then gain access to the system.
Yep, that's exactly the case. I mean, and we've all seen that with things that don't have default credentials anymore, which is highly recommended, right? When you release a new product, you don't have a default admin or something like that to get into it. During setup, you say, hey, create your own admin account, set up your database connections, do all that stuff, do the setup. And then all the endpoints that are used for that are supposed to essentially disable once it's finished. And the way that Confluence disabled those endpoints was by setting that flag, like setup is complete, right? It's setup complete or something. And the flaw here in 22515 is that you could hit an endpoint and turn that flag back to false, and thus enable those endpoints that let you create the admin account.
Right.
And do the setup. So
yeah, what's the difference? Do you understand how the exploit path for 518 works? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of detail. it's still pretty early, and analysis is still kind of ongoing on diffing patches and stuff like that, and some of the vulnerabilities take advantage. But essentially, it's also a setup related thing. There's an endpoint that people are able to access unauthenticated to reset the Confluence instance and allow an administrator to be created as part of setup type of thing as well. Kind of, it's different endpoints. It's a different thing. It's setup restore endpoints. But and it seems to be in combination with, as far as I can understand it, again, I haven't done like thorough diffing and analysis or anything, but there's a header that goes with it to basically say, like, you know, don't check for a token for this, like you're good, you know, type of thing, and it does it. So yeah, both of them lead to administrator accounts being created. Both of them lead to being able to get you know, malware delivered on the machine and stuff like that, and full ownage of the endpoints. So
yeah, one, I think, sort of semi-saving grace with this was that it does whatever you're doing, it still operates under the context of Confluence, right? So it's not like an admin account it's not like a system admin account. And so the only thing, at least from what we saw, that the attackers were doing, and again, this has changed some since them making this statement, but they were, you know, encrypting with ransomware the files that that Confluence context could access. And so that it limited damage a little bit, right? I mean, nobody wants to have anything encrypted, but it at least wasn't at the time, you know, creating anything that allowed them to pivot inward. And so when Confluence initially or Atlassian initially put this out, they were just saying, you know, hey, there's not a way for people to exfiltrate data from these servers, but they can encrypt. But that's a little shady to me. I feel like if you've got the access to encrypt, you've probably got the access to pull it back out somehow.
Yeah, and I think that's why they changed it to a 10. I mean, they say they changed it from a 9.1 to a 10, quoting due to a change in the scope of the attack. I'm assuming it's because of that. They're just realizing, yeah, okay, you can do more with it than we were saying. So
yeah. When there was an article that came out this morning, essentially, that just said that now they're seeing backdoors, right? It's called the effluent backdoor,
effluent,
which
yeah,
effluence, yeah, which is a funny name. But yeah, essentially web shells and that kind of thing to allow attackers to come back in and then potentially pivot elsewhere.
Yeah, so one thing, and you may have mentioned this, Pinky, I don't know if you did, but just to clarify too for our listeners, right? This is all on-prem instances. So if you have cloud Confluence or cloud Atlassian, you're fine. But all the on-prem instances like data center and server, right, are impacted by this. The one difference I did see is in the 22515, which was the first one, it affected versions of 8, right? 8 through like 8.5 or whatever. But the previous versions weren't affected by that one. So if you had 7 or before still implemented, those weren't vulnerable. But the 22518, which is the second vulnerability, I think that was all on-prem versions, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many of these systems were available online, Pink?
Did not. That was a good question. I kind of thought about that. We should have checked that out. We don't have a count on it. I'd say it's quite a few. I'll say that. But yeah, it was. Anytime we see those big ones come out and we see those sort of rapid attacks, right? Usually it's the land grab thing we've talked about in the past, where they establish to come back later. This one, I did think it was weird that they were just hitting them with ransom immediately. Like, it just, I don't know, kind of felt like a wasted attack to me, because you're going to hit one server and people probably have backups to that and they're not going to worry about it.
Right.
But now with the effluence and things like that, that's probably going to change a bit. So hopefully folks have them patched. But yeah, I haven't done a check on that. Is that what you're doing now, Oscar? Kind of look like you're.
No, I wasn't. Sorry, I got distracted.
Oh, gotcha. No, you're good.
Yeah.
Real fast, just because I don't want to let it go too long before we answer it. But Bryant in chat had asked about 7 minutes ago if we're seeing any AI involved in attacks or remediation. Just want to talk about that at all?
Attacks, not so much. I mean, we've seen rumors of, well, for one thing, right, we don't know. I mean, it also depends on kind of what level are you saying being used, right? So, like, we don't see an AI system attacking things just, becoming sentient and going all Skynet or anything like that. But there has been malware and things like that have been adapted with AI. And I think there was one pretty recently that had sort of I think it would call back to one of the large language models or the like ChatGPT, you know, whatever, and it would kind of rewrite itself as it went. So, you know, we have traditional like polymorphic ransom or polymorphic malware that as it spreads, it changes itself to evade hash detection and different things like that. And I think this was just a more advanced piece of that. Not seen it in the wild, was just read about it. But then on the detection side, everything has AI. Um, all the detection tools, they all say they have the AI now. So I don't know. I mean, maybe. It all still looks pretty much the same to me. But
Yeah. And I think too, he's talking about remediation paths here right now. The remediation paths for these are pretty manual, right? So you're applying the patches. If you have been exploited, we're essentially, you know, recommending that you restore systems previous to that exploit date or rebuild these systems. And so that's all still pretty manual.
Yeah. I could say from the attack point of view too that I do think there's some theoretical stuff that people are floating the idea of. I don't know how much is really kind of out there and being used, but there's some really cool projects in general that are talking like that you create a project that it doesn't run itself or doesn't just purely work off of AI, but it takes certain information, like it gets information from AI, does something, takes that result, sends it back to AI, and then goes off of that. And so there's a lot of really neat things that are coming out of that. And I say really neat because I'm an attacker and I'm not really thinking about it from the defensive side, so sorry. But I mean, like, there's interesting projects that are continually evolving in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if something does exist to some small level right now that we don't know about. But if we were to see an uptick in that over time, I mean, what we do see is that a lot of people who are creating malware are utilizing AI, not so much to come up with something that's novel, but more to speed up certain processes, or maybe to make up for shortcomings. Someone knows what they want to do, but they don't know exactly how to do it. They're using AI to kind of get a base. They're saying, hey, and you can't just go to ChatGPT these days and say, write me a piece of malware. But if you say like, hey, I need an efficient encryption function that takes in this type of data and whatever, right, does it in this way, it'll do that for you, right? If you say, hey, I want code that changes itself and it's kind of polymorphic in some ways, I want to know how to do that and how I could write some code to do that, it will give you that. It'll, as long as you keep it bite-sized, it will give you all of the pieces to create the malware. And so there's a lot of people out there who either, like I said, lack the skills to know how to do it themselves, and instead of Googling and spending 100 hours learning, they're just asking AI to kind of teach them, and then or kind of frame it out for them. Or two, there are people who are just using it for efficiency. Like, yeah, I could write this, but I could do this faster if I just have ChatGPT to do this section for me. And so we're seeing a lot of that. It is getting less experienced people into the game, which is probably a negative in a lot of ways. I mean, it's positive in some ways too, when you look at it as a whole for development in general. But when you look at it for malware, less experienced people getting into it easier means that you're going to have people with less overall thought, more malicious stuff, I think, in general. I look at myself as a teenager when I was a little stupider and didn't know what I was doing. I did some stuff that I regret. You know what I mean? You're going to have more people being able to do things they regret later in life, I think. And yeah, so, but
definitely the potential for more destructive malware because they're not thinking about it as much on the financial terms of I need to preserve enough here so that I can get a payment, kind of like with ransomware or something like that. More just let me burn the world down kind of things.
Yeah, well, fast entry. I mean, those people generally maybe don't. People who quickly want to come out and just wreak havoc, they don't necessarily spend hundreds of hours to learn how to do it well.
Right. Yeah, and as far as, I mean, that's what we did, just for the hunting ground here for our internal training tool. That's what I did. I mean, I wanted a piece of ransomware, so I went and asked ChatGPT in little chunks, how do I do this, how do I do that, and then just put it all together to make that. So yeah, you certainly can piece it out if you've got an idea or you have any sort of a little bit of a foundation, right, to know what needs to go where and that kind of thing. You can have it piece it out for you.
And two, I think you guys can tell me more about this. From what I've seen, even when you're trying to extract these snippets of code to create that overall project, like, there's still so many problems in the code it spits out. It works half the time, and you still have to tweak the code for even the snippets to get into a functioning state. So it's not super simple still, right? Like, there is still somewhat of a barrier for people to get working code extracted from the model.
Yeah, it's hit and miss, and it depends on how complex your ask is, I think, and how yeah, I mean, I guess how much it has to kind of make up on its own. The more it has to make up, the more chance there's a, you know, flaw in the way it made it up, right? But if it has something to base it off of and actually solid code, I mean, I've seen some people come out, literally just get like some functions straight out of ChatGPT and they just compile. So it just depends on what it is you're asking.
Right. Cool. Hey, Pink, and you may have told us this again, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask, of the cases that you've observed related to these Confluence vulnerabilities, have all of those servers been encrypted, or is it a mixed bag?
Yeah. At least all the ones we got calls on, right? They were all encrypted. That was what tipped them off to it was, hey, our Confluence server isn't working, something's wrong, and pop in and see if they were encrypted. So yeah, that was pretty widespread. Like I said, I think that was like we see, it was kind of the scripted attack. Go out and hit every, you know, check all the IPs. Do they have this service? Boom, go run this process.
Okay.
So
yeah. So I guess for our listeners, takeaways here, there's patches out for both the vulnerabilities now, I believe, right, guys? So get those patched. And I would say, even though the attack chain that we've seen before is straight to encryption, that doesn't always mean that's going to be the case. So you want to do a deep check on the system for IOCs to see if that you have been compromised. Like the same old story we tell about every vulnerability I feel like that comes out today. Like a patch is not enough. Obviously, make sure that patch hasn't been exploited. We know there was mass exploitation. Threat hunt the system, see if there's any IOCs. And I think we have some pretty good IOCs up right on Project Toffee. Is that right, Pinky?
yeah, we do. And then we have links off to the other, so like Rapid7's article on it and Atlassian's article on it. Yeah, we don't have, because this just came out today, we haven't added the one about the effluence backdoor, but that one does just kind of point more toward what you're saying, Oscar, of please make sure you threat hunt these. If you had one that was vulnerable, there's a pretty high chance it got exploited. And if you've not seen ransom on it yet, then they may be waiting to come back. So keep that in mind. So yeah, patch, threat hunt, look for everything.
What a dumb move to just quickly deploy ransom over the weekend on one server.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, it was my same thought was like, this is goofy. Like this is somebody who did not think this through.
So maybe this is the kid that got exploit from ChatGPT. It was like wrote his own encryptor from ChatGPT and was like, let's just blast him.
Maybe.
Oh, we see that. I mean, you could also look at it from the perspective that 515 was released, and they have some similarities, at least in I mean, they're not the same endpoints, they're not the same functionality, right? But like Confluence is getting looked at heavier now. Maybe like if you're sitting on 518 and you just see 515 release, you might want to try to monetize it as fast as possible, knowing that eyes are on the product, right? And maybe it's a ticking clock for you, and you're like, you know what, blast them all and see if we get some money.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they did. I mean, I'm sure they got some money. So
cool. Anything else on that one?
No.
Yeah, no. That's it. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I did have one other point. Just the other thing, because of things like the effluence backdoor and the potential here, don't just look at your Confluence server, right? Look at everything that can access and think about that deeply, right? So does it have domain credentials? Does it, are those domain credentials, do they map over to a VPN account that they could use to get back in with later? Different things like that. If the server's in a DMZ or something, what other servers are in that DMZ? Let's look at everything. So just keep that in mind. It's very likely to not stay limited just to Confluence. It is very early, a week out from 518. So keep that in mind. Just make sure you're thinking that whole process through and not just going, let's just restore from backup and move on, because that may not be the right move here.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Also, man, Halloween's over, bro. Halloween's over.
Still spooky here. It's still spooky. I mean, I don't really have like a turkey decoration to throw up, so I'm just kind of waiting to Christmas now. It's a little early for
a Christmas tree, man.
Yeah, put up a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I'll put something back there.
Had a tradition in our household that Christmas tree goes up the day after Thanksgiving forever. And this year, Sarah's like, I want it up before Thanksgiving. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we're apparently putting up a Christmas tree very soon.
Yeah.
And ours is lights and all that.
Ours is up in the house, and it's purely because we've got two kids, and every time we're like, no, we'll just wait till after Thanksgiving, we're putting the Christmas tree up like a week before Christmas, and it's just a nightmare. So we just knocked it out.
Post-Thanksgiving Christmas tree family here.
I
know
prefer
they're-
it, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Megan pointed out, like,
Yeah.
your
Thank you, Megan.
decorations are great. I was
Yeah,
just,
don't
you know, I
don't
just
decoration shame. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's terrible.
All right, Apache MQ. So this one's a critical as well, right? I think, yeah. Remote code execution vulnerability and Apache MQ came out. It's October 27th. Apache MQ is an open source message broker that's written in Java. So essentially it can foster messages between different applications, right? It's a high level rudimentary summary of what this does. So this one was interesting too, because the CVE was published October 27th, right? I think the patch came out the same day, which tells me Apache knew about this, right? And they obviously were working to dev this before that CV got released. There was a ton of these servers available on the internet too, right? Over 9,000, I think, at the time of publish.
Yeah, not 9,000 with, I mean, as of earlier this week, still almost half of those still available. A little less than half now. Looks like 3329 in the article we put up. So it was 4,000 or something right before that article was written. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys know about this one? Have you seen any activity on this, Pink?
We've not had any calls on this one, so I actually know a lot less about this one than the others. Just from what we've read and kind of talked about a little bit. Do know it's, you know, being pretty heavily used to, again, deploy ransomware, because everything is. But yeah, haven't seen a ton about it. They did note that, so yeah, like the patch came out on the 27th. They've seen attacks went back as far as October 10th. That you know, Arctic Wolf and Huntress have observed. So you know, it's been active for a bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's a deserialization attack, which is a bit of a complicated subject for a lot of people to kind of wrap a head around, but it really just comes down to you know, when transferring data from one state to another, you can transfer an object essentially, and then kind of turn it into a string, turn it from a string back into an object in the memory and the application on the other side. In this particular case, and in any case where you're doing that, if the client can control it in some way, that's potentially dangerous and needs to be very, you know, closely looked at. Oftentimes what happens is like, yes, okay, and there's a lot of different types of objects, like JSON objects or something people are very familiar with. It's used all over the web. Technically, that's an object that gets serialized and then deserialized. And so similarly, if you're passing something through and then something takes it and deserializes it back into an object, the big concern is that you need to make sure that it's the same object you expected when in this process. In this case, and in almost every case where there's an attack path found around this, what happens is that the type isn't strictly maintained or strictly controlled or checked, and so they expect one type of object to get deserialized when they do this process, and instead another one is sent, and that other one has some kind of lifecycle function that can be exploited to actually run code. And that is the case here. In the fix for this and the diffing of patches and stuff, that's what they're doing. They added in some checks to say, hey, is this the right type of object, which is something that you should always be doing, but it gets missed, you know, time and time again. So I mean, this isn't the first time, and it's not the last time we'll see these types of attacks. So yeah.
So what you're saying is your numbers get out of order and then things get all messed up. So
yeah, yeah, basically. Yeah, it's like if it's like, you know, if your you know, family members, like, I'm sending you a gift for Christmas, and you're like, cool, I love gifts, let me open that when it gets here, and then you open a bomb. You're like, what happened? You know?
Right. Yeah.
You got to check to make sure it's actually a gift, not a bomb, before you push all the buttons on it or something. You know what I mean? Like,
so that we got to run it through the TSA security scanner, like an X-ray machine, make sure your gift's a gift before you open your gift. I mean,
you know,
that's what we're doing here.
Maybe some indicators on it, like, you know, maybe the fact that it came in some wood box or something instead of gift wrapped. I don't know, you know what I mean? But maybe you just be careful. You go, hey, is this the type of thing I was expecting? No, I'm not going to open it then.
but what if you wanted that bomb for a gift? I mean, it wasn't going to detonate, but just got a bomb.
You're probably going to be breached in some way. You know what I mean? Your whole body might get breached. Maybe part of your house. You know.
No. It's a non-detonated bomb, man, that we could just go blow some stuff up with.
What if it detonates when you open it? Okay.
Yeah,
it's got a life cycle function that detonates on open. All right.
We didn't tell me it had the life cycle function built in.
Well, I'm telling you now. The developers didn't know either. All right. Now here we are.
I would just like to note for our friends in the NSA and the ATF that are listening that this is all hypothetical and we're just having a laugh. And please don't come to my house.
Wait, your
Yeah.
family members don't send you bombs or gifts? It's like a trick-or-treat situation?
No, they
Oh,
not.
okay.
No, no.
Oh, that's
Even
just
if they did, I'm not saying it on camera, bro. I mean, come on.
Oh man. So
We
this
got real
affects
lost there.
a lot of versions, all versions before 5.15, 5.1, 5.16, and then there's some specific versions in 1.6, 1.7, and 1.8 that are affected. I think we got an article up on this one too, don't we, Pinker Man?
We do. Yeah, Tom on our team got the article up, and there's a lot of good, same thing, a lot of good info in there. He did include the shadow server scan to show how many are still out there and available. And like I said, as of 3 days ago, there were still 3329 of these servers still out there. But yeah, got the Huntress Labs and stuff articles in there for folks, and a lot of good stuff in there about how to deal with this. And then, like we note in our article too, yeah, it's they initially saw it deploying SparkRat ransomware, which we've never dealt with. I mean, that I can remember anyway. And then they also, since then, have seen Hello Kitty ransomware, which is just great, and one called Tell You the Pass, which I have not encountered either, but it targets Linux, and so that's just something to be aware of there. I mean, it's Apache. A lot of Apache things are going to run on Linux, makes sense, but we don't see a lot of Linux ransomware. There are a few, but it's pretty rare.
I'd say the remediation path of this is going to be similar to the path we just talked about with Confluence, right? So patch your systems, threat hunt your systems, look for indicators of compromise. If you have been compromised, then you want to do a lateral threat throughout your lateral threat hunt throughout your environment. See if there was any lateral movement and any other systems have been affected, and then likely just restoring pre-exploit on this system and following up with any other indicators you may find throughout the rest of your enterprise.
Definitely, yeah. We did notice too. We did throw in there's a link off to a list of IOCs for this. So, okay. Yeah, if you find any of those, definitely threat hunt. Definitely check to make sure they didn't go anywhere else.
Okay. Cool. Anything else on this one?
No, just seems like Apache's had a few months here. It's not the first one we've had recently. Same thing with Confluence. It just seems like everybody's kind of getting hit in batches.
I think the same thing about our next topic too. Citrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Citrix, NetScaler ADCs, NetScaler gateways. There's 2 CVs that were published about the same time as October 10th, right? Almost a month ago. But they're tagging this one as Citrix Bleed, which reminds me of Heartbleed. Yeah, what do you guys know about this one? Let's talk.
It's real bad.
Yeah.
There you go. And that's my assessment.
This one is one I have not had a lot of time to dig into. But yeah, I mean, as far as my understanding, mostly from what we discussed before, but I mean, is that, as with other things that have named bleed, it comes down to a data leak, memory leak, right? Where people are able to pull sensitive data, potentially sensitive data, at least. I'm sure a lot of the data is not sensitive, but a lot of able to pull data out and then potentially acquire credential information, cookies or something like that to be able to authenticate with, right? And then get full access to, or get login access to compromise stuff, and then continue doing dirty work after that, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's from my understanding. It's essentially they're doing a memory dump from the system through a get repress to bleed the memory. And then from the memory, there's always going to be on the NetScaler like a AAA session cookie. And the AAA session cookie is already post authentication, post MFA. And so you can use that cookie as a replay in a replay attack, gain access to the device with bypassing authentication, and then move into the next steps. And I think from what we've seen here is kind of like we've seen a lot of this year, obviously enumeration, credential extraction using Mimikatz, deploying other backdoors, and specifically, here we go again, deploying remote management software, AnyDesk, Splashtop, Atera, and I think we talked about that on here before, but like we are seeing more and more attackers shift in that direction where it used to always be Cobalt Strike. It was always a command and control framework. And while there still may be command and control frameworks, we're seeing that attackers are really, really utilizing AnyDesk and Splashtop a lot now. And let's talk about why. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, a lot of people already have these in their environment, so it's not going to throw up any flags if somebody's monitoring for newly installed software, that kind of thing. the trick there would be different versions, that kind of thing, right? Make sure those versions match your versions. But yeah, they're quiet. Everything ignores them, right? So most EDR tools ignore them because they're legitimate software, that kind of thing. Whereas if it sees any indication that it's looking at a Cobalt Strike beacon, it throws up a lot of red flags really quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and to
I was going to say, you see this in general. I mean, like attackers oftentimes, especially the smarter ones, are going to live off the land in some way, right? They're going to use something that's already there if they can. And the reason is because EDRs, antiviruses, whatever have you, anything that's meant to stop things, they are meant to stop things, but at the same time, they're meant to make sure that they're not getting in your way of business. Otherwise, you're going to go with a different vendor. And so they have to have a certain amount of exceptions. They have to work around certain pieces of software, even if they know that the software does get used maliciously. If it's also most of the time not used maliciously, they can't trigger on it, right? Or they're not going to trigger on it harshly, at least, right? And so built-in things are always great, but also things that you just know environments use a lot. If you know that a lot of people who use a lot of different EDRs are going to be using these types of remote management things, and they're not going to flag on it as much unless someone's monitoring for those installs and does catch that. Which, I mean, honestly, yeah, there's a lot of people that are doing it, but there's a lot of people who are not monitoring for software installs.
A lot more not.
Yeah. Well, and maybe you take a look at the top organizations in the world. Sure, hopefully they are, right? But that's not what all organizations are. A lot of them are these medium-sized businesses, small businesses that are definitely not doing that. And so as long as nothing's flagging it, they're not looking at it, and so it's an easy win.
Yeah, and
it's also a piece of software. I feel like if an end user is compromised, for example, and they see AnyDesk, that doesn't necessarily pull alarms for them either, right? They're not thinking, oh, I need to report this to help desk. I think most uninformed users are going to see that and be like, oh, help desk must have put this on my system, right? And so not even reporting that.
Let's be honest, most uninformed users don't have any clue what it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
if they even notice, right? It's likely running system tray. They're not going to see it anyway, or they're running it as a hidden process.
Yeah, and you're right. We're seeing a ton. I mean, I think we were talking about this a while back. We actually saw Cobalt Strike in an attack in the last month or month and a half, and it surprised me because we've just not seen it hardly at all this year. Yeah, we're seeing a ton of this, and kind of to tag on to what Eric was saying about exceptions and allowances from antivirus and EDR. This is one of the reasons that kind of stress to people that when you're looking for things in your EDR, I mean, if you have any indication that there might be an attack, or if you're just doing some kind of routine threat hunting type things like that, look for things like this, things that you don't necessarily expect to see or whatever. But you can't just rely on the alert mechanism of an EDR tool or an antivirus because these aren't likely to throw an alert. And so this is actually a gripe I have with a lot of the EDR tools out there, is that while they often have really, really good detection engines and rules and all this stuff, they tend to miss things like this pretty frequently because it's just not going to flag. And then some of them have the ability to go search through processes and play back historical data and find this kind of thing. And others don't. And some do, but they keep it for a very short period of time, different things like that. And I've played with a lot of them, and they all have their little quirks and that kind of thing. But this is one that I would like to see become a little more mainstream, is having that long-term sort of playback ability of, let me go see, was Notepad connecting to the internet? Okay, that should throw a flag, but it didn't this time. So let me go see what's happening here. And maybe it's like with our investigations, right? We may be working on an investigation for weeks or sometimes months at a time, and we'll find something, a few weeks into the event that was a TTP or an IOC that we hadn't seen before, right? And so then we want to go back and look in the past and see where this was being used. And a lot of that stuff, like I said, it's not going to show up in alerts. So you can't just go, hey, what are my devices that have alerts on them? Let me look at that. So it's important to really sort of baseline your environments and understand what you have out there and understand what normal noise actually looks like. A little bit of a rant there. So just, I've been testing a lot of things over the last few weeks, and that's kind of fresh on my brain. So
Yeah, kind of I'm taking a step back here. Another thing related to the ADC and the NetScaler gateway is one of the mandate reports was talking about how the investigations into these devices was challenging because the lack of logging that exists by default makes it very difficult. That's something we've talked about before, right? So if you have these devices, make sure you are reviewing those log settings and you're backing up your log data to another location, because from my understanding there's not a lot stored on those devices long term. They roll over pretty quick, so it makes it pretty challenging to see if you have been compromised. So I would recommend going through that exercise and offloading those backup or those logs somewhere else and backing those up so you have the data. Furthermore, I think in this situation, like, the patches are out again if we talk about remediation for our folks, so make sure you are applying the patches. Threat hunting or exploitation hunting is probably going to be challenging because I'm guessing most people aren't going to have those logs backed up today. So I would suggest doing the threat hunting you can on that device, but looking in proximity, like Pinky had mentioned before, for other systems that are in proximity to that device. But more so understanding that an authentication cookie was likely stolen and used to access the device. I recommend going through and resetting all active sessions and requiring re-authentication of any sessions that were active on that ADC. And then when you do that as well, right, monitor those attempts to reconnect, because you're likely going to see some failed attempts if the attacker has that cookie and they're trying to replay that cookie after you force log out of all those active sessions, because that cookie should no longer be valid. And so that would be an indicator of compromise that you had been compromised before as well.
Yeah, and again on these, like you said, it's difficult. The logging is tough. What I think is a little, I don't want to say tougher, but one thing that a lot of folks don't have in place is logging between your NetScaler device and then your internal devices, because everybody, it's one of those things, that's our security device. We don't worry about things coming from it. And so I do know that in attacks that we've looked at, that is a difficult challenge, is finding out what did they do after they hijack that session. Because if they don't leave any tracks behind, or some IOC or something we can find, then it can be tough. And then beyond that too, with these, it can grant a level of access to the NetScaler device itself, and those do store credentials for certain things, right? Like LDAP if you've got an AD connected. It does have that stored in a configuration file in there, and from what we've seen, it's fairly trivial to decrypt that password that's in there. There are open source like GitHub scripts to do that. And so I would say, even beyond what Oscar's saying there about resetting sessions and everything, which is great, look at all accounts that are involved with that thing and consider resetting passwords and everything for those, because they could have been compromised as part of this.
Yeah. I mean, and people are moving laterally. The attackers using this are moving to via RDP and trying to attack other systems and stuff. So if it's been compromised, you could have an active attacker in your environment in general. So
yeah, and so
consider that.
Yeah, and we talk about this a ton, but like you think about that path, right? If I'm an attacker, I get in, I do move laterally into the environment. I'm going to establish another persistence mechanism somewhere inside that environment. That way, when you do close off my hole at the NetScaler, I've got another way back in, and I'm just going to go direct to a domain controller or wherever it's at now, through a beacon or some other mechanism like that. So definitely keep that in mind.
I can say as an attacker, anytime we've ever gained access to a Citrix NetScaler device, I mean, the first thing we're doing is, or to a login, first thing we're doing is seeing what else we can touch and moving immediately.
Right. It's usually a lot, right? You can usually get to a lot of things.
Usually it's a decent amount.
Yeah.
And usually it's pretty trivial to start shifting around and moving somewhere else and getting off that initial spot. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. This has been good, guys. I do want to say a couple things really quick. Pinky's awesome Halloween stories last month are now blogs. So if you guys enjoyed those and you want to go read those stories and go check it out. If you could read and put this in your headphones and let Pinky tell the stories along with it, whatever you guys want to do.
I did have to tweak them a little bit to put them into blog format, but yeah, they're pretty close.
Yeah. So. And so that brings me to my next point. So we'll be back in a month for December, coming up on the holidays here. I don't know, man. I was just thinking, like, What if Pinky did like a cyber Christmas story, and it was like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, or like a Christmas Carol, and the theme of like cyber stories? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Honestly, it probably
Merry Breachmas.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say it
Merry
depends on
Breachmas.
how Breachmas goes here. If I'm gonna have time to do that, but I can give it a shot. I can try that. I can probably spin something up there.
Okay.
Be a lot of fun. I have to have some. I mean, we'll have to have some eggnog. I think for that, right?
Mm. Some
You know,
spiced cider.
yeah, maybe something like
The
that.
12 exploits of Christmas. Love it.
So Marcus that just dropped that in the chat. He didn't send it to everyone, but he's on our team. And to his credit, the name of the stories on the blog were from him essentially. So I stole his name and gave it that. It's Tales of Encryption. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the true genius is now known. Thanks for sharing that. You've been outed. You're a fraud, Pinky. That's okay.
Yeah,
We still love you.
Fine with that. Somebody
Brian's
asked
asking if we'll share the blog links. You want to throw those in?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm getting to it right meow.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. And as we wrap up here too, as always, if you guys have suggestions for content or ideas, things you'd like us to talk about in future episodes, just send us an email. We'll be happy to try to include those things. And otherwise, I hope everyone has an awesome Thanksgiving. Get some time with family, and hope everybody gains a few pounds because you ate too much turkey and pumpkin pie.
I mean, certainly going to happen. Yeah, no doubt about that.
For sure. Is sriracha good on pumpkin pie?
I don't know pumpkin pie, but I bet it's awesome on turkey though.
Oh yeah, it's great on turkey. I mean, turkey sandwich, little cheese, little sriracha on there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, depending on the flavor profile you're looking for, it's decent in mashed potatoes too.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
See that. Yeah.
I put it on everything. I put that on everything.
I think you're going to get a
as my good friend Tech Nine says.
Yeah.
Put that on everything.
Man, now I'm hungry. I skipped lunch. That was a terrible idea. Now I'm just starving. So thanks.
We'll get out of here.
Good thing we're done. Go eat lunch.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next month.
Bye everybody.